Welcome to our Backyard Brothers podcast. We are talking NFL preview. And as soon as we start, Dustin starts freaking out over there with the camera. Anyway, uh, um, I'm, yeah, we've been excited to bring these NFL previews. Let me set the stage by saying that for the last almost 10 years, actually, I think that I have in one way or another done NFL preview um, documents. It started, I think Dustin and I did a first one on my blog, which was a tiny little thing that maybe was, I don't know, 100 words for each team. It wasn't a lot. Uh, that was 2014 that I started that, and it's evolved. The document that we finished this year is 275 pages long. Uh, so it's quite extensive, and I pride myself on it being one of the more extensive and in-depth previews that's out there, really, even though it's not seen by a lot of people. But now that we have this podcast as well, I kind of changed it a little bit because we're taking a lot of the content online rather than leaving it in the document itself. And so that's what this preview is for, and that's why we have 4 weeks of it, because we're kind of constrained as much as we can, at least in a 40-minute platform. We'll probably have two back-to-back platforms each week if we're staying on Zoom in this way. Although I doubt it'll be necessarily 100 or 80 minutes in that case. So let me begin by sharing a screen because I have a short presentation for each team based on the preview that I've done, and then we'll jump into there. And this is kind of reminding not only our panel, but also those watching about some of the things that have happened from each team so that we're not just jumping into it willy-nilly there. So are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay. We are starting with the Baltimore Ravens here. The Ravens' first option, their first thing that they had to do this whole year was to sign Lamar Jackson to a long-term deal. And they accomplished that. They made him the highest paid player in the NFL up to that point. And so he's there for the foreseeable future. As far as offensive playmakers, we got J.K. Dobbins, who's in a contract dispute. Odell Beckham Jr. was brought over. The biggest thing was to bring weapons over for Lamar Jackson once they secured his contract. Odell Beckham Jr. is that big weapon that they brought over. Mark Andrews is always there. He's a very good tight end as well. Offensive line returns 4 of the 5 players from last year. The only new addition is at left guard. Ben Cleveland was a depth player last year, and he's replacing and being promoted to left guard. Everyone else remains the same. Defensive line here returns 3 players, although Michael Pierce was injured for much of last year, and he returns at defensive tackle. Linebackers, Baltimore Ravens have a history of great linebackers, and this is the case across the board here. Roquan Smith was an all-pro last year, and they have good outside linebackers as well. In the secondary, they're replacing some important players. Rock Yassin is a new addition, replacing Marcus Peters. Kyle Hamilton was a rookie last year. He replaces Chuck Clark. The other 2 are holdovers from last year. Just a quick look at the depth on offense. I won't talk much about this other than you're seeing some of the depth pieces across the offense. Zay Flowers, I'll mention him as the first round pick for the Ravens out of Boston College there. And moving on to the defensive depth as well. Pretty good defensive depth across the board there. And lastly, special teams. Justin Tucker, probably the best kicker in NFL history. Long snapper Nick Moore was an all-pro last year, and he tore his Achilles in the offseason. And so they've replaced him with Tyler Ott, an addition from Seattle. And then this is just the quick look at the coaching staff. The big one to mention is Todd Monken, new offensive coordinator brought over from University of Georgia. He's won 2 straight national championships over there, and trying to bring his quick pace offense to the Ravens, changing that up. So with that, let's jump in. And I wanted to go in a similar way as we did for the preview. And so in alphabetical order by first name, and then rotating that as we go through. So Cody, you're up first with any analysis, any questions, and anything like that that you would want people to know. What is your analysis of the Ravens?
Well, first off, I want to start with this extension for Lamar Jackson. In my opinion, he doesn't deserve to be the highest paid player, highest paid quarterback in the NFL. He's good. He's very good. He's running back in a quarterback position. But in my opinion, he hasn't done what Patrick Mahomes has done. He hasn't done what Aaron Rodgers has done. He's not at that same level. He's not elite, in my opinion. So he doesn't deserve the contract extension he got. Of course, he needed an extension, but I just don't agree with what they paid him. Again, he would have walked probably if they didn't pay that. So I understand that's what they did. But I'm curious. After my analysis, I'm curious what your guys' thoughts on Lamar Jackson's extension there. That's my first thought. There is he doesn't deserve being paid what he is being paid, in my opinion. Secondly, I've heard a lot of good things about Zay Flowers, a lot of good things. I knew he was going to be good coming in. He was obviously a first-round pick for a reason. I believe he was Boston College, is where he came from. Really, really good. But I've heard that from what they've seen, that this may be the best receiver in Ravens history. I don't know if that's true, but if that's true, we're waiting for a show this season. So I'm really excited to watch Zay Flowers perform and play. I think he's definitely going to be getting a lot of first, second, third downs, a lot of playing time. And then lastly, I wanted to talk a little bit about John Harbaugh. So fantastic coach, a winning coach, Super Bowl winning coach. But my question for you guys, and this is one of the questions I put into the preview, is he has not been back to the Super Bowl since he won in 2012, I think it was. They have gone to the playoffs multiple times, but in the NFL, the purpose of playing is to win a Super Bowl. That's the whole idea. That's the whole purpose. And so my question that I had put in the preview was if he's on the hot seat. And that's a question I want anyone to be thinking to themselves, wondering is this winning coach, the Super Bowl winning coach, is he for any reason should he be on the hot seat? He has not taken this team back to the Super Bowl. He hasn't gotten close to the Super Bowl. That close at least, and since 2012. So that's my analysis overall of this team. I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on that, and then I'm glad to hear what your guys' analysis is.
Yeah, I'll respond to that first. First of all, I want to attack your position of Lamar Jackson and deserving that. I remember when did he win MVP? Was it 3 years ago? I remember during that season, the same exact concern that you have of running back, playing the quarterback position, that's been said about him his whole career, right? And I remember there's several games, he threw for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns and had a 90% completion. And people talk about them, and all he had to say about it is, yeah, not bad for a running back, huh? And that's how I look at it. Is this guy is one of the most athletic players on the field, absolutely. But the way that he plays quarterback is absolutely phenomenal. He is accurate. He has a great arm. He makes great decisions. He is 100% a quarterback, just as good as any other scramble quarterback that has succeeded before, where you're talking about Michael Vick being the obvious comparison. And so that's a whole lot of money to pay him. I don't agree because it takes up so much of the team's space, but I do agree that him being a former MVP is worthy of it. I think this year, last year I kind of look at it almost like a fluke because there are so many injuries all throughout the team, including to Jackson. This year they have the opportunity to get back, and I think that's the hurdle that this team needs to overcome is the injury bug. If they can keep healthy all throughout those skill positions, quarterback, defense, this is a team that really can compete for that division title against the Bengals and can be a top team in the AFC. It's just that injury bug.
Yeah. Let me respond to Cody's questions here, and I'm gonna kind of push back a little bit as well in this way. Lamar Jackson was his own agent. He's never hired an agent. He's done his own work for his own career, and he was trying to get a fully guaranteed, I think, $250 million deal, and no one was going to pay that, including the Ravens. And the Ravens pretty much stood pat until Lamar Jackson said, "Okay, fine, what do you want?" And the Ravens said, "We will offer you a $250 million contract, but only $150 million of that is going to be guaranteed based on incentives and things like that." And the Ravens won that deal. Because they held out and they said, "We're not going to pay you what you want. No one's going to get that. We're going to pay you what the market is right now, and here's what the market is. You're a top paid quarterback. You will be the highest paid quarterback in the league, but we're going to do it based on the market standards, pure, simple." And Lamar Jackson finally said, "Okay, fine." And so the Ravens won that deal. And so I think Lamar Jackson gets what he wants mostly. He's the highest paid quarterback in the league. The Ravens get what they need. They need Lamar Jackson. You look at what when Lamar Jackson is not in the game, the Ravens don't win games. That's just plain and simple. Last year when Tyler Huntley, I think, played in 5 games, I think he started 5 games. The Ravens went 2-3, I think, maybe 3-2. I can't remember which way that went. I mean, he was good enough, but he doesn't bring the same skill sets that Lamar Jackson does, especially in the passing game. And so I think that was great for him to do, or for the Ravens to do. And then as far as John Harbaugh, I think the easiest answer is to say no, he's not on the hot seat, plain and simple. And the reason, I think, is because he's won 2 Super Bowls. He's got the Ravens to the playoffs 4 out of the last 5 years. Yeah, I mean, the ultimate thing is to win a Super Bowl, but if every team is basing their coach on winning the Super Bowl, you're going to have 31 coaches get fired every year. And that just doesn't work that way. If you go to the playoffs 4 out of the last 5 years, you're set. You're doing a good job. And so I think that's his. Anyway, as far as my analysis goes, I'm not as high on the Ravens as you two are, and here's why. You've replaced a lot of the important positions with lesser players. You've replaced, especially on defense. I mentioned you replaced Marcus Peters with Rock Ya-Sin. That's an issue. You replaced Chuck Clark with Kyle Hamilton. You've replaced Calais Campbell with Broderick Washington. You're replacing all of these really impactful players with those positions. And even as you bring offensive talent on board to help Lamar Jackson, Odell Beckham Jr. hasn't played in a year and a half. Zay Flowers is unproven. Yes, he's supposed to be great, but he's unproven. Rashad Bateman can't be a number 1 receiver as he proved last year. Mark Andrews is still great, but I don't like all of the changes that they've made. It's really based on risks, I thought. And so I think the Ravens are one of the few teams that actually got worse this offseason rather than better. So
I do agree, and I mentioned this in the preview that it's, although this being a successful franchise, 4 of the last 5 in the playoffs, it's been interesting that the moves they made look to be more desperation moves than normal building up your team.
welcome, Pam. You've changed the entire entire nature of our podcast, because we can no longer call ourselves just brothers.
Yeah.
Backyard brothers and sisters. So talk to us about the Ravens, Pam.
Oh, the Ravens. Let's see. Um, from what I heard you guys talking a little bit earlier, or I guess I really hadn't heard much, but I know one thing that I think what was it like Cody mentioned on the NFL preview was about the head coach and how he and whether he thinks he's on the hot seat or not, and I don't know, I forgot what I said, but I think they should do pretty well this season. Like I'm not too concerned. Like what I know, they've been like pretty consistent with like making it to the playoffs. I don't know like how many seasons it's been now, but I think I'm not like sure whether I don't know how far like they'll make it into the playoffs, but I think I think we'll see them again there this year.
I think most of us agree with that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Pam. Okay. Any last thoughts about the Ravens from anyone here?
I think so.
Awesome. We will move on to the Cincinnati Bengals then. Okay. Cincinnati Bengals. Again, they have one of the best quarterbacks in the league in Joe Burrow. He has proved everyone wrong or right in some cases. First overall pick. He was an all-pro last year. He has been as good as anyone could have expected. And he was asked how long is the window open for a championship, and he confidently said, "As long as I'm playing." And so that pretty interesting take there. The Bengals have probably the best wide receiving core in the NFL. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd are all top 30 players in their positions, and they all get to play right here. Joe Mixon, Irv Smith is the other addition at tight end. Offensive line remains pretty similar. Orlando Brown is the one addition brought over from Kansas City. Big time addition at left tackle there. The other four are the same, although Lyle Collins at right tackle will miss the first half of the season at least with a ACL injury. Defensive line is looking good. Trey Hendrickson is a fantastic pass rusher. At linebackers, these two are probably two of the more underrated linebackers in the NFL. They play extremely well. And the five in the secondary here, they had to replace both of their safeties who left in free agency. Daxton Hill replaces one, and Nick Scott is a new addition brought over from the Los Angeles Rams to replace the other. Offensive depth, as you can see here, it's pretty much the same as it was last year with some rookies added in. But Jonah Williams is the only one I want to call out. Bottom right, he was the starter at left tackle last year, was replaced by Orlando Brown, demanded a trade, and the Bengals pretty much said, "Good for you." And now he will start at right tackle for Lyle Collins until he returns. Defensive depth, Miles Murphy, call out a first-round pick there, the first pick for the Bengals out of Clemson. And Jordan Battle at safety down here in the bottom corner as well will play a lot as well out of Alabama. The secondary, they drafted a punter out of Michigan, and they have the unique ability to return all five of their coaching staff for the fifth year in a row. Pretty amazing when you consider the NFL. They have these three coaches for 5 years in a row. So, Dustin, start us off with the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned about the coaches is probably the best thing that they have going for them, is that they have a coaching staff that's been completely consistent and working together for a long time. Think about, our own lives and the jobs, your own team. It's rare for a whole team to stay intact for longer than, in some cases, a year, a couple of years, something like that. This is 5 years. And so this is great. And I think that's going to set them up for success and a potential return to the Super Bowl. I think the last thing that I'd say is I'm predicted in the preview for Joe Burrow to win the MVP this year. I think that he's absolutely capable of doing that and elevating himself to a player that throws 40 plus touchdowns, and I hope and expect that'll happen this year.
Pam, you're up next, alphabetically.
All right. I didn't realize that about the coaching stuff. So so I also agree. I know that in the past, the offensive line was kind of like, what was like, they're a weakest spot, I guess, with Joe Burrow getting like sacked a lot and stuff like that. Seems like they've done some things there to to fix that and so I don't imagine why they wouldn't make it like far as the playoffs as not to the Super Bowl, but I'm expecting really good things from them this season.
Yeah, I think we all are as well. And Dustin, I was with you. I also predicted a Joe Burrow MVP this year. He seems headed for that trajectory as long as he stays upright and he stays healthy and his receivers stay healthy. I think he's a great pick for MVP this year. And the Bengals have done so good, I thought, in what's called future proofing their roster. They're going to have a really difficult decision come up when Jamar Chase becomes eligible for his extension next year. He's gonna be paid as a top receiver in the NFL, huge contract. That's gonna go along with Joe Burrow's huge contract already and a bunch of other ones. And so they are really working on bringing in young talent and working to make sure they have pieces in place that they can say, this great player, we got to say goodbye to you. That was the case for Jesse Bates, free safety. The Cincinnati Bengals were planning for the last 2 years that they would not renew his contract, that he was going to be gone. And they were trying to make sure they replaced him. Daxton Hill was their first round pick last year, and he was going to be the guy to replace him immediately. And that's what they did. And they're doing that across the board with all of their positions, making sure that, we know we're going to lose some guys because we have to pay a lot of people some big money, but we want to make sure we have the pieces in place to still compete. And I think the Bengals are doing a great job at that. And I don't see any reason why the Bengals should not be AFC North champions again. Cody?
Well, I agree with you right there that there's no reason that they can't be AFC North champions again. I think that this is a team that is repeatedly, I should say, has developed into a consistent contender in the league, and that's thanks to Joe Burrow. He's a phenomenal quarterback, and I think really the only one that, as of right now, can be compared to Patrick Mahomes. He's that good, and actually I think he has a winning record against Patrick Mahomes right now, so which is saying something. And everyone knows that. Zach Taylor, I think, is a great coach, and I think that as long as they get a good boost to that offensive line, that this is a team that is going to be deep in the postseason, barring any serious injuries to any significant players. And so I agree with you. They probably should be AFC North champions, and if they're not, it's probably a disappointment.
Yeah, good thoughts. Any last things about the Bengals? Okay, moving on. The Cleveland Browns. Deshaun Watson was the highest paid player in the NFL until Lamar Jackson's contract. And he didn't play extremely well last year, but he was out for a year and a half with suspensions and injury and holding out. And so they're holding out hope that Watson can be the player that he can be, that he showed 3 years ago. Their offense looks really good. Nick Chubb is probably the best running back in the NFL right now. They brought over Elijah Moore in a trade with the Jets to be that third receiver along with Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones. This is probably the best offensive line in the NFL. If they're together, if they're strong, Joel Bitonio, Wyatt Teller are the two best guards in the NFL. Jack Conklin and Jedrick Wills are excellent at the tackles. This is a great offensive line. Defensive line was the worst in the NFL last year, and you can see they've made some significant changes to it. Myles Garrett is still there. Zadarius Smith added to the other side, and Dalvin Tomlinson in the middle. We'll get to depth in a second, but these are their three linebackers. Nothing really to write home about on any one of those three. Denzel Ward, great cornerback. They brought over Juan Thornhill, the great safety from Kansas City, to join that back end. Grant Delpit was a do-everything player last year as well. Offensive depth includes Cedric Tillman, their first pick, which came in the third round due to some trades. He's going to be an impactful receiver for them as well. They also added to their offensive line in the draft and the free agency as well. Defensive depth, you can see how many additions they made on the defensive line. They were very intentional to change everything in their defensive line because of how bad it was last year. They also added some players in the back end. That's important as well, like Rodney McLeod. Secondary returns intact, or not a secondary, special teams returns intact from last year. The biggest addition maybe is to defensive coordinator here. Jim Schwartz, a fantastic defensive play caller, former head coach in the NFL, joins the staff. So normally those would be Dad, but he's not here, so I'll go first with the Browns offseason moves and analysis. I really like what the Browns have done, honestly. I think that if they remain healthy and if Deshaun Watson plays like he played in 2020, this is a team that not only could challenge for a playoff spot, I really think that they could challenge the Bengals for the AFC North crown. I really do think that because they have done so many good things changing over their roster. Now, with that in mind, can Deshaun Watson play like he did in 2020? He has that potential. I think the Browns have the widest gap between where they are and where they could be. If Deshaun Watson plays like his 2020 self, like I said, the Browns could win the AFC North. If he doesn't, if he plays as bad as he did last year, there's no telling how bad this team can be. They have that huge gap. And for me, I can't project on Deshaun Watson's success this year based on 4 years ago. I have to project on what he did last year, which wasn't good. And so I think the Browns will be improved, but I don't think I think they'll finish third. That's where I'm picking them to finish in that division. And so, but there's some really good things to talk about with the Browns. On over to Cody.
Yeah, when you first said that you think that they'll be able to challenge for that playoff spot, I would say you're crazy. But after you or not playoff spot, excuse me, the AFC North championship spot, I just think that after your analysis, I mean, you have really good points. That if Deshaun Watson plays as well as he can, then yeah, this team has. I don't know if really they have to have a ceiling, but I think he lost a lot of confidence in the last few years, and I think he's trying to build that back up. So if he can do that this year, then I can see where you're going, and I could probably agree with you, but that'd be a hard Bengals team to pass up. So I can't say that they're going. I can't say they have a good chance to win it. But I mean, they can cause problems for the Bengals, I think. But I agree. It all hinges on Deshaun Watson.
I think my position, contrary to yours, Scott, is that what you said about the Browns offseason is copy paste of every single offseason of the Browns the last 25 years. Every single offseason, they've completely redone their entire roster. They tried to say, okay, yeah, that wasn't working. Let's do this. Let's do this, do this. And they've had, maybe 4 successful seasons in the last 25 years. And so they occasionally it hits and it works and they're able to have a successful season. But the issue with this team is that the ownership and general manager core, and that every season they think they need to completely redo something in order to fix the problems of last year, and they don't give the team and the coaches the opportunity to gel and learn how to play together as a team. And it's been the same story for 25 years, and so I expect the same result as previous years, and that mediocre at best, because they just don't have the same chemistry that other teams in this division and in the league have. And then I don't see it changing until a general manager strategy changes.
I think that's fair. I guess I was saying their ceiling could be high, but their floor is also very low. And so that's why the widest gap I thought between any team in the league. And I'm picking more the floor than the ceiling this year, but somewhere in the middle. Any last thoughts on the Browns? Okay. Oops. Moving on to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Kenny Pickett is their quarterback. He did enough in the last few games of the season to convince them that he could be the guy moving forward. And so he returns this year at quarterback. Their offense, Najee Harris was a workhorse last year. He did a lot of good things at running back. They added Allen Robinson in a trade with the Los Angeles Rams to bring him up to a third receiver, along with young players, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, and Pat Freiermuth. Offensive line, they made some changes on the left side. Broderick Jones was their first round pick, the left tackle out of Georgia, and Isaac Sumalo brought over from the NFC champion Eagles at left guard. Defensive line, you still have Cameron Hayward there. Keanu Benton is a nose tackle they drafted out of Wisconsin that will step right into the nose tackle spot. Larry Ogunjobi is really good on the other side as well. This linebacker core, probably the best in the NFL. TJ Watt on one side, Alex Highsmith on the other. Both were fantastic, and TJ Watt has been a defensive player of the year. They changed up the middle of their defense. Cole Holcomb and Landon Roberts, both new additions to the middle linebackers. And in the secondary, Patrick Peterson brought over to play the cornerback. Joey Porter, the son of the Steelers great, brought over to also take that other corner spot, the second round pick. Minkah Fitzpatrick and Keanu Neal in the other two safety spots. Offensive depth, as you can see here, Mitchell Trubisky's still there if they need him. Not much else to say here, honestly. Defensive depth, a lot more additions coming over. Marcus Golden is a big addition. He's been a double-digit sack guy in the past. Chandon Sullivan also added in the secondary. They brought over Braden Mann as a punter. Everything else remains the same. And their coaching staff remains the same from last year. It is important to note that in 16 seasons, Mike Tomlin has never had a losing record. That is pretty impressive. Back to you, Cody.
I'm not convinced yet that Kenny Pickett is starting caliber, I guess is a good way to say it. Of course, we'll see this year, but I'm just not convinced that he's going to be the guy. And then behind him is Mitch Trubisky, who is really inconsistent. He can be really good and get some really beautiful dimes to players, but then the next play he's throwing a pick six or getting sacked for 15, 20 yards or something like that. And so their quarterback situation is not looking good, in my opinion. And that's the most important position on the field. And so if you don't have a good spot there, you're not going to get very good throws to your receivers. Then they stack the box. You can't get any run game going. And so from my view right now, this is going to be a difficult season for the Steelers. But I believe in Mike Tomlin. He is a fantastic coach. He always has been for the 16 years. I think he's going to figure out a way to get this team to keep a winning record. I don't think it's going to be crazy, like, 12 wins or anything. It'll be 9-8 at best, in my opinion. And so I think that he can do that. But we'll have to look at Kenny Pickett, what he can do this year.
The strength of the Steelers team is in their defense. To agree with Cody, they don't have a strong offense, and so I think that I think the way that this team wins games is defense keeping the score low, and giving the offense those short field opportunities or even defensive or special team touchdowns, things like that, in order to help the offense put up the points, which is going to be the struggle. And so it's I would say every single game this season is going to be if the Steelers can keep their opponent under 20 points, Steelers can win. But if the other team scores more than 20 points, they're going to lose. Is probably how this season's going to go. Is that 20 points is the barrier for the win-loss. And it's kind of all on the defense.
Yeah. Okay. With all due respect to Mike Tomlin, he's a great head coach. 16 seasons of winning records is amazing. I think he is a fantastic head coach. If he gets the Steelers to a winning record this year, it'll be the best job he's ever done. I do not like this roster. I do not like Kenny Pickett. I didn't like him coming out of college. I didn't like him last year. I don't like him this year. I don't like the changes they've made on offense. Their defense, as Dustin said, the backbone of this team, and they're really, really good. And they can win. They'll win some games. The defense will win games. But in this NFL this year, the new generation of the NFL, you need to score points to win games. Unless you have the best defense in the history of the NFL, you have to score points to win games. And I don't see the Steelers scoring enough points to win enough games to have a winning record. And I guess that's just the long and short of that for me. Any pushback, any final thoughts about the Steelers? Okay. Let's see here. I want to. Whoops. Hold on a second. Okay. I'm sharing one different screen here. This is based on what we each predicted for the AFC North. We are pretty consistent, obviously, about having Bengals, Ravens 1-2. We are not consistent picking Steelers and Browns 3-4. So it looks like I'm the only one here out of us three that picked the Browns to finish third and the Steelers fourth. And the reason, again, like I said, I really like the Browns, what they've done this offseason, and I think they can win enough games to at least pass over the Steelers in that division. Anyone want to talk anything about this?
Go ahead, Dustin.
I said it before about the Browns. I almost expect a kind of a crumble, just with them not being able to gel together as a team. That lose 3 games in a row is going to turn to losing 7 games in a row, and whereas the Steelers, that defense has gelled, does have a culture set up, and so that's why I picked them over.
Yeah, I sorry.
I was going to just say we're going to be kicked off, and we'll finish the second half of our thing here in just a minute. So, Cody, do you want to try to sneak anything in?
I'll start on the next one.